Guys, where's the best place to order pizza from? Mr. Nelson's ordering us some pizza and just asked me where I want it to come from. Papa John's, I agree. Passions?
I was thinking Papa John's too.
Melon mushroom. Yeah, you're right. I can shell out the big bucks. I say like pretty much anywhere except Domino's. I don't like Domino's. Let's see, who are we missing? Oh, no, no, no. No, do not leave site. Cancel. This almost closed my 50,000 tabs I have open. Pizza butt. It's funny. Troy, do you remember when you were in probably 8th grade, maybe 9th, and I didn't know about whatever command it is, whatever Q, Shift Q, Command Q, whatever, that just like closes out all of your tabs? And you were like, it's a really, you and Franny, and we're like, that's a really cool thing that your computer can do. And I didn't know. And you closed out all of my tabs. I also do not care for Pizza Hut these days. When I was a child, it was the place to go. It was so good, but their quality has diminished. Okay, we don't have Ian. We don't have Ian. He'll probably show up. I'm not excited about all of you growing up. Like, have I sat around and cried about it yet? No. Will I? Probably. In fact, my arch nemesis, Bryce Tomlins, was here the other day, and I was just like kind of sentimental, not emotional, but sentimental about the fact that you guys are all graduating. He was like, you know, I'm going to make you cry on graduation day, right? I was like, why would you do this? I was like, no. And this goes for all of you too, by the way. Don't be nice to me on graduation day. Like, I won't be able to handle it. Just choose that day to be like obnoxious and ungrateful and terrible and in a bad mood. That will make it better. If you're nice to me, I'll cry. The first graduation, when like Heather and Tyler and all those guys graduated, I was totally fine throughout the whole ceremony, except for Mr. Nykert cried, and I was like, ooh, and just like try to keep it together. But I was okay until Michelle Carter, who never even speaks, came up and hugged me and like told me thank you for everything I'd done for her, and was like, I hate you, Michelle Carter. I mean, I might. Who knows? We'll see. All right, we got Eli. We still do not have Hayward or Ian, which surprises me. He might show up. You're planning to give a graduation speech? I would support that. Just you walking across the stage, smiling, and leaving. But, you know, I was thinking the other day, and I'll definitely like send out more info about this. I don't know when, but I mean, graduation is June 15th. And typically, or at least the first year, the only year that we've had like a real graduation, there was like a senior performance, and that year it was just Tyler and Riley. Last year they were fully planning to do a senior performance, and it was going to be a lot more. They were going to kind of try to do everything together, like all 10 seniors play something together. But obviously that didn't happen, didn't work out. So start thinking about it if you want to do some kind of senior performance, if you want like some of you to perform, like elect some representatives who you know are very good musicians to play. If you just like want whoever wins Battle of the Bands to play at graduation, that could be a thing. Like I said, I'll email you guys about it later on. But just start thinking about it. I thought about that because I was like, oh, I feel like Troy should do a solo. Remember when you did a solo at a chorus concert one time? It was good. You definitely did. Chip, I have not gotten your pictures yet, but I know that they are coming because I have talked to the woman and she was like, the only person whose photo I've taken whose picture is not uploaded is Charles. Troy, I'll have to look into that. Where Troy is missing. Okay. Christian, I emailed you and your parents the other day about it. I don't know if you got that email or not, but double check with your parents because I emailed all three of you. It's not required to get a senior photo, but if you're only one or two seniors that don't have it, number one, parents just like to have senior portraits just to like show you off. My grandmother had this dumb senior portrait I took with a sunflower, I don't know why, on her mantle until the day she died. But yeah, if there's like one or two people who don't have it, it does kind of tend to stand out. And for the record, what I have done the past 2 years, both years I've had one student who didn't take their senior portrait. And what I did so that they didn't stand out was reach out to some friends of mine who were in like graphic design. In fact, the first year it was Mr. Benvenuti, and said, hey, if I send you 2 pictures, can you Photoshop this head onto this body? And so last year, Jerica, and the year before that, AJ, their portraits are Photoshopped. You want me to see if I can do that for you? What I did was just like take one of your old like normal school portraits and put that head on a body. All right. Is it legal? Probably not. If I had to guess, it's probably a copyright infringement, so don't tell anybody. But also we used to use a really expensive photographer. And personally, I think maybe their photos were a little bit better, but they just like, oh, it's so expensive. And a lot of people didn't want to do it because they didn't want to shell out the money for that. And I totally understand that. So our photographer now is a lot more reasonable, less expensive. People were paying like hundreds of bucks before.
It's wild.
It's wild. Like, why does it cost so much? I know that you're like paying for a service. Mr. Nelson says he was going to get Pizza Hut.
Oof. But you know what else is wild? I went to Chick-fil-A the other day, and their technology, like their cash registers, just magically stopped working when I went in there. So I got 2 free milkshakes. And right as I was walking out, they started working again.
You always get free food. Remember you got all that free food from Sports Pub?
Yep. And I got a free drink.
Oh my God. Oh, somebody's trying to get in. It is Hayward. Wonderful. Hayward, we really have not started doing anything yet. We've been just talking about senior stuff and graduation and how much I'm gonna cry. I'll charge you this $5 quality photo for $50 million. That's about the size of it. Like, their photos were really good, to be fair. But were they worth that much money? I doubt it. You mean pizza butt? Just kidding. That's fine. I'll eat it. I don't care. I did bring lunch, but it's not pizza. Okie doke. Let's talk. You don't really have, most of today is just talking, to be honest. First of all, what I want you to do is tell me anything you think you know about Frankenstein, just from either pop culture or what you might have heard about the book. What do you think it's about? What are the things you think you know? Frankenstein is not the monster. Yeah. He sometimes has a heart of gold and epicness, which I don't think is really a word, but we'll go with it. By he, do you mean the monster or the doctor? The monster. Mm, yeah, kind of. My first group of seniors that I did this with, they all I'll talk to you about that in a minute, whether the monster is actually wholesome. They couldn't keep it straight. Like they couldn't just call the monster or the creature. So they called Dr. Frankenstein Frankenstein, and they called the monster Frank, which I think is more confusing. He was brought to life without his consent. I mean, yeah, he really was. I feel like those of you who are doing the thing about body snatching um, can probably kind of put together how he's created. Monstrous Frankenstein. Well, you know, like the whole, where's my book? This version of Frankenstein that we're used to seeing, like just from Halloween costumes and everything else, they'll be like, people will refer to that as a Frankenstein. And I'm like, it's not a Frankenstein. Okay, Chip, we'll talk about the project. And also, there's one day, maybe tomorrow actually, that I'm pretty much going to give you the whole class to work on it. It is tomorrow. Okay. But I'll talk to you more about it. I was really hoping to find an old version of it, like something that a kid had turned in a previous year. But the only one I found that's still on my computer was not very good. So unfortunately, it's not really worth sharing. His backstory is that he's cut in pieces and torn up, which is why the doctor had to stitch him back together. Sort of. Yeah, that's totally fine. Got a name for your podcast and everything. That sounds good. Okay, so we do have some knowledge of it. Definitely over the years, particularly because of film adaptations. There's a lot of stuff that people kind of misunderstand about Frankenstein. First of all, if you have seen the old movie, he kind of is just like, he doesn't even talk in the first movie, the monster. If you watch Bride of Frankenstein, he does start talking in that one, but he literally says like bread good and something like that. Friend. It's basically like, you know, very, very broken English. And when we start reading actually about the middle of the book, it's really interesting the way this book is set up, because it's kind of a frame narrative. There's a frame narrative within a frame narrative. And you have a few chapters right at the middle where the monster kind of starts telling his story, and he's very articulate. Once we get there, that's maybe my favorite part of the book, actually. Even though he kind of talks better than Victor Frankenstein does. But it's really interesting to hear his perspective and hear like how he came to be able to talk and everything. And that's just, it's sort of one of the more eventful parts of the book. So the way that he's kind of created, you know, in the old movie, he's just like electrocuted into life basically, and that's not wrong. Like those of you who are doing your project on galvanism will kind of understand that a little bit better. But why does he do this in the first place? Any ideas why he ever kind of gets the idea to create life? No ideas? It's cool if not. Well, he is a doctor. While I wouldn't say he's mad in the beginning, like when he gets the idea, I think it definitely drives him mad over the course of the book. He is a doctor, a medical doctor, and so he has a lot of knowledge about the way the body works and about life, but he keeps losing. I wouldn't say keep losing. A million people don't die or anything, but he loses some people he really cares about, and that devastation over death kind of leads him to think, how can I prevent death? Nobody should ever have to go through the death of someone they love. And like, here, but there's something to be said for not trying to play God. And that's sort of one of the main themes of the book. He just gets it in his head that because he has all this knowledge, exactly, prevent death by making life or reanimating life so that if you die, you don't really have to stay dead. And so those of you who are doing your podcast about grave snatching will kind of understand this, that people did used to rob graves for the sake of like science and experiments and stuff. So he's just sort of like, hey, I'll do that too. And he steals a body. And because he has all this medical knowledge, he knows how to like make it all work. And he brings this creature to life, and without his consent. So when the creature comes to life, basically he's so ugly and horrible that Victor Frankenstein doesn't want anything to do with him. He's scared of what he made, and so he just like abandons the monster and hopes that he's dead. Spoiler alert, he is not dead. And how would you feel if the minute you came to life, the minute you were born, the minute your brain came online, the person who created you, your parents, were just like, oh God, ugly. I don't want anything to do with this person because they're so disgusting to me. And it's like, well, why'd you make me in the first place then? Exactly. If you're born and your parents are just like, ugh, that's nasty, and they run away from you or like throw you away, that's bad. I mean, not that parents never throw their children away, but usually not just because they're ugly, you know. It is sort of like a villain backstory. Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I really like this book, because we kind of have this image of this Frankenstein being a monster and just like killing people. But there are definitely parts of this book where you feel a lot more for the monster than you do for Victor, because at least the monster didn't really have any say in this, and Victor's the one who decided to play God and do things that were really like not in his power to do. Like I said, after we read the book, which like I feel like we'll be on this book for a while. It's not that long. I mean, you can see here, not that long. And I'm trying to remember how many pages the PDF is, but I don't. We will watch a film version of it, which I think is the best film version. It's the one that is most closely, it most closely adheres to the book. But while I usually say the book is better, and I still might say the book is better, the ending of the movie changes a thing that I think makes the ending way more powerful than the ending of the book. So I had to kind of like not fight, but I had to like go to bat for watching this movie with Mr. Nykirk a couple of years ago, because it is rated R, so you will have to have parents' permission, even though most of you will be 18 by then. But I wrote him this like long email. I was like, I know that we're not allowed to do this, blah, blah, blah. But this is the reason why I want to. This is a really strong thing. This is what I really want the students to do with it. And it was like two long paragraphs, I think. And he emailed me back in one sentence and was like, so you just want to show clips of the movie is what I'm hearing. Cool, get permission slips. So I was like, okay, well, you need not have worried about that. You do still have to get permission slips, even though most of you are 18. I know that you guys watch our movies, but you know, you're in school. So technically we are not allowed to show R-rated movies. But also I've seen this movie a lot of times and I know which parts parents would be upset about, and I'll just skip those parts. Yeah, I agree with you, Troy. Like if they change the ending of something and it's not as strong, then I think that's dumb. I don't know why they do that, but the way that the movie ends, I wish the book ended that way. Eli, I think you sent me a message that you meant for somebody else. It's not inappropriate or anything. I just don't think that you meant that. Okay, so knowing what I've just told you about Frankenstein, obviously he creates life to prevent death, basically. No worries. He wants to preserve life. He doesn't want to have to go through the pain of losing somebody that he cares about. Chip, technically no. Would I know if you did? Probably not. I shouldn't have said that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. He's trying to prevent death, and essentially he's thinking, if I can prevent death, if I can reanimate, then we don't ever really have to die. You see the search for immortality throughout so much literature, and this is where it comes next to what we read / watched yesterday with the Sorcerer's Stone. And Harry Potter, it's this Sorcerer's Stone that can make the elixir of life, which prevents death. The guy who's been drinking it, the guy who invented it, is like 665, I think. I think you're right about that, Eli. Although I didn't see Logan, so I don't know how that ended. So I know you guys have answered this question if you turn in your work for from yesterday. It was due today. But somebody just kind of sum it up for me. What is the danger of a thing like that? Something that will potentially make you immortal?
Half-Life, maybe?
Yeah, for sure.
Or was that the unicorn?
That was the unicorn, but like he was doing all of it to try to become immortal. So, you know, in Harry Potter, he had a half-life. Spoiler alert for Frankenstein, it doesn't go well for him or for the monster. And there are just all these things that he didn't really consider. Beyond that, there's also the fact that the guy who has the Sorcerer's Stone is constantly trying to guard it and like has to have all of these charms and spells to protect it because people are always trying to get it. And when you have something so powerful that could preserve life, prevent death, yeah, you really put yourself at risk, not only for like people trying to take it from you and doing whatever is necessary to take it from you, but also at risk for yourself. I mean, that kind of thing, that's a lot of responsibility. Owning something or being able to make something that could make someone immortal. Yeah. In fact, another Harry Potter connection. In the last book and the last two movies, there's this story about the 3 Deathly Hallows, which if you own all 3, you would be like the conqueror of death. And one of them is the most powerful wand in the world. But they kind of warn you against wanting to own that because like if it can beat anyone, if it can do anything, then somebody's always going to be coming after you. And like in the story, the person who owns it gets killed because somebody else wants it so much. And I feel like that's kind of a relevant theme that goes through so much. It is like Achilles' heel. Yeah. It's like the thing that even though you have so much power, you've got this weakness. Victor Frankenstein has all kinds of weaknesses. He drives me crazy. I I feel like I relate to him in a lot of ways. I don't know if you guys know about the Enneagram, but sometimes I like to kind of try to determine what characters Enneagram types are. And I think that Victor Frankenstein are the same Enneagram type. It's kind of like Myers-Briggs, if you don't know what Enneagram is. He's just so like, he has all of this knowledge, but he just, in his quest for more knowledge, he oversteps his boundaries and he tries to play God, and he does a lot of really messed up stuff. That's exactly it, Chip. It puts a bounty on your head just because you have it. Everybody else is going to want it. And that's definitely the case with the Harry Potter stuff. In Frankenstein, I don't know that I would say other people necessarily want it, because he doesn't tell anybody about it for most of the story, because he knows it sounds crazy. If you tell somebody, I went and stole a body and electrocuted it and it came back to life, I mean, that sounds nuts. No one would believe him. But because there's so many times in the book, genuinely, where I'm like, just tell someone, because he ruins so many things about his own life because he is like holding on to this secret. And like Troy said, it does kind of drive him insane. He gets sick a lot in the book because he's just like petrified. He like he sees his creation and he faints, and then he's sick for like a month. So he's maybe not the most emotionally stable dude in the world, but I think that he's pretty, obviously he's pretty intelligent. So I want to go through a few things about this book with you guys. I'm going to pull this up and then share my screen. I did not create this thing that I'm about to show you guys, but there's a lot of good information in it. I just wanted to say that I didn't create it because the first thing that it says is all of this stuff is fair game on quizzes and the unit final, and that's not accurate. It's for somebody else's quizzes, not mine. Okay, so we actually talked a little bit about Mary Shelley when we were doing poetry, because her husband is one of the ones that we read, Percy Bysshe Shelley. It's such an unpleasant name to say, Percy Bysshe Shelley. It's the sh sound right in a row. I don't like it. Anyway, we talked a little bit about her. Her mother is actually quite famous for this essay, I guess, that she wrote, Vindication of the Rights of Women. Her name was Mary Wollstonecraft. This author's name is Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. But you can kind of see here, she was the daughter of radical parents who didn't believe in marriage and lived separately. It's quite a scandal back then to be the child of unmarried people, but they were like, they were cool about it. Her dad was a radical political philosopher who advocated utilitarianism and anarchism. So he's pretty extreme, pretty radical. And her mother is this famous feminist who wrote like one of the foremost pieces of feminist literature ever. But she died like right after she gave birth to Mary, and she was raised by her father. And then even a little bit more scandal here. When she was 18, she ran off, and I think I mentioned this when we were talking about him. She ran off with Shelley, who was one of these super important romantic poets, and he was married at the time, and his wife was pregnant, and because he left her, she drowned herself. Crazy. I'd love to watch. Actually, I think there is a movie that has come up recently about her. Now, I was about to say I'd love to watch a movie of her life. I think I can. So they were married in London. They were trying to gain custody of his two children, but they did not. They had several kids, but 3 of them died soon after birth. She got very depressed about it. She had only 1 surviving child, and kind of wrecked their marriage a little bit, like that kind of thing can do. And Percy, unsurprisingly, would go and like be with other women. And all these things really had a profound impact on her writing. And you'll be able to tell that once we start reading Frankenstein. Apprehension about giving birth is a theme that runs throughout the novel. There are literally women who give birth, and it's traumatic and terrible. And then there's also the fact that, in a way, him creating the monster is a sort of birth, and obviously that goes not great. So her husband actually drowned during a storm while sailing, and then she fell into poverty, and she continued to write fiction to support herself. But this is the only thing she was really known for. None of her other work was nearly as famous as this. This was her first thing that she ever wrote, and by far her most successful work of fiction. So I kind of just want to, I'm not going to read all this. We don't care about the related literary works, but because this class is so much based on the eras of literature and how they react and respond to each other and how literature changes through time. What's up? Oh, I think somebody is intending to be muted and they're not. Most critics consider the Gothic genre, which is part of Romanticism, we know that, a reaction to the Age of Reason, the Enlightenment that came before it in the 18th century, because that really stressed the power of the human mind above everything. And there was just this unchecked faith in humanity. So people set out to reshape society. The American and French revolutions, I'm looking right here, erupted, and the Industrial Revolution forced people into long, grueling days in factories. Not great. The Gothic novelists aimed to represent the dark side that accompanied this age of apparent human progress, at a time when writers and thinkers had begun to believe in the infinite perfectibility of man. Gothic novelists portrayed human beings as woefully imperfect and at the mercy of far more powerful forces such as nature and death. I love that description because I feel like it's so apt for Frankenstein, because Victor really sets out to create a perfect man. He's not trying to like save someone he knew in the moment. He's just trying to think like, can I do this? Like, is this within my abilities? And so he gets like a stranger's body. He doesn't know who it is. And thinks, can I create the perfect person? Sorry, someone is unmuted and I keep hearing like little noises, like little laughs and stuff, which is okay. It's not upsetting, but just want to make sure we're paying attention. So I was going to talk about Prometheus, but I don't think I will today.
Hey, is that Gene Wilder?
It is Gene Wilder.
Hey!
Have you ever seen the movie Young Frankenstein?
No.
It's literally one of my very favorite movies. Like, it's in my top 10. And Gene Wilder plays the grandson, I believe, of Victor Frankenstein. And he's like tried to shake off the reputation of everything that Victor Frankenstein did, but then he gets involved in it himself and successfully creates life from a dead body. And it is so freaking funny. Like, I think I saw it for the first time when I was a kid, and I thought it, just like the title Young Frankenstein, I thought it was going to be a horror movie. And then once I started watching it, I was blown away. It's so funny. I highly recommend watching it. I think it might be on Amazon Prime. I'm not sure. So this was published in 1818. The setting, it moves around a good bit in the setting. It takes place a lot in Switzerland, some in France, England, Scotland, and the North Pole, which those of you who are doing your project on polar expeditions will know. And probably next week, maybe the week after, we'll do some stuff involving the setting. We'll have a little creative project. Like I mentioned, Frankenstein is told through a few layers of first-person narrative. So it's got this like frame within a frame. It's like a Russian doll of stories. Walton is the primary narrator. So when we start, which I think we're going to start reading on Thursday, it's from the perspective of this dude, Walton, who is an expeditioner. Is that what you say? I guess, expeditioner to the North Pole. He's trying to find new territory, but what he finds is Victor Frankenstein like floating on a log or something. And he makes this connection with him and is like, what's your deal? Why are you out here at the North Pole? Tell me your story. And so Victor starts telling his story, which is really when chapter 1 starts, about like his life and growing up and how he came to create this monster. And then, like I mentioned, in the middle of it, he talks to the monster, and then there are a few chapters that are from the monster's point of view. So we have this cool little like multi-frame narrative. And Walton's stuff starts with letters to his sister. So some interesting facts about this novel. It's sort of meant to be a ghost story, or at least a horror story. And it's pretty cool the way that it came about. And some of you may have heard this story before, but this dark and stormy night in 1816, Mary Shelley and her husband, Percy Bysshe Shelley, and some other people, primarily writers, including Lord Byron, who we read some of his stuff, they decided to try to write their own ghost stories. It was like a contest among friends, kind of, and she couldn't come up with anything at first. And then a few nights later, she had a dream in which she envisioned the pale student of unhallowed art kneeling beside his creation, the monster. And she started writing it. The next morning, she showed it to her friends, and they were like, yeah, holy crap, that's actually really scary. And it's, I don't know what the others wrote, but I don't think any of their things ever saw the light of day. I don't think any of that stuff was published, despite her husband and their friend Lord Byron being poets of the time. But her book was really what came out of this. So she actually published it at first anonymously, with the thought that this story is really grim, it's really violent, it's disturbing, and maybe it won't be as well received if people know that I am a woman who wrote these things, which is a very real concern back then. It's actually kind of the opposite now, which is interesting. In like thriller books, like psychological thrillers and like verging on horror, that's like primarily what I read is like thriller novels. There are a lot of male writers who change their names to be like unisex names because women are the primary readership of that kind of book. And according to someone, I don't know who made this like study of it, but women respond better to women authors. I don't think that's necessary. I mean, it's not true for me, but I guess overall it's enough. Like that movie, The Woman in the Window, which eventually will be a movie starring Amy Adams, is supposed to come out like during COVID time, so it's been pushed. But the dude that wrote that, his like pseudonym is AJ Finn, because AJ could be a girl or a guy, and everybody kind of assumed that it was a woman. And then he came out and was like, no, it's actually me. And he's actually a terrible guy. I didn't really like that book, honestly. But at any rate, that was just kind of a tangent. She revised the novel and published it under her real name in 1931. And there are a few differences. Like, I'm not going to read that stuff because y'all won't understand it at this point. But, she changed a few things, which is normal. Other authors do that too. Stephen King does that. So we know this about Romanticism, that it's like towards the end of the 18th century, it can kind of be seen as a rejection of the precepts of order, harmony, balance, rationality, all these things that are really standard in like earlier 18th century and 17th century, and was kind of a reaction against the Enlightenment. So we're emphasizing, y'all will know this from your Jane Eyre projects, we're emphasizing the individual, the irrational, the imaginative, the personal, the spontaneous, the emotional, the visionary, and the transcendental, which transcendental means like beyond the bounds of normal life. normalcy. So some characteristics here just to reiterate, and this is stuff we've seen before, but some of it's phrased a little bit differently for sure. Valuing sensitivity and feelings over intellectualism, which is really interesting with this one in particular because Victor Frankenstein is so intellectual, and his primary concerns are intellectual concerns. But he's also super emotional. Valuing the wisdom of people who might not be well educated or sophisticated. I can think of several examples from the book. So I'm excited to talk about these things once we read those parts. Appreciating people for being unconventional and unique, maintaining childlike curiosity and spontaneity, maintaining a strong connection with nature, and considering science and technology dangerous. And again, this is a great example of that because a lot of dangerous things occur because of so much knowledge of science and technology. And this is definitely still a theme that gets used later on. Like I think about Ray Bradbury, who most of you know I love. He's my favorite author. But he wrote a lot about how technology is so dangerous because there's so many possibilities with it, and because we come to rely on it and kind of lose connection with each other. So people are still using this kind of theme, but I think particularly back then, like around the time of the Industrial Revolution, there's so many leaps in science and technology that it's almost like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. And obviously Victor Frankenstein does get ahead of himself. I'm not going to read all of this, but we know that Gothic literature is kind of an offshoot of Romantic literature. It's got some similarities to like Dark Ages and medievalism. Like a lot of Gothic literature has stuff about like dungeons, secret passageways, liminal spaces, like very atmospheric stuff, which is one reason why we read a lot of Gothic stuff and like associate it with Halloween. Frankenstein's totally associated with Halloween, even though it never mentions Halloween. But ghosts, graveyards, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of like supernatural things. But I think that's important. The Gothic is directly related to and arguably led to the modern genre of horror in literature and film. So I think that is all we're going to talk about. We already said this. Frankenstein is arguably the single most important product of this Gothic tradition, which is one reason we still read it. We also read it because, like I said, a lot of its themes continue into literature even today. It affected a lot of writing that came after it, a lot of literature. There's so many themes that relate to science, poetry, psychology, politics, education, family relationships, all of this stuff. And this is well said. It is hard to imagine a more archetypally Gothic circumstance than the secret creation of an 8-foot-tall monster out of separate body parts collected from charnel houses, which y'all who are doing the grave snatching thing, yes, I will in 1 second. Those of you who are talking about the grave snatching thing would probably know what a charnel house is, and maybe you can teach us about that. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. We have a few minutes left, so we want to talk a little bit about the project, which is due Friday. Just to reiterate, and I will take individual questions if you have any, but how long did I say? I got to look up my own project. Mostly because I'm doing a project in like every class right now. You're just recording it, and I did say that if you want to incorporate a visual element, that's totally fine. You're allowed to do that, but it's a podcast, so primarily it's an audio medium. And what you basically need to do is look up all the information that you can find about your topic, whichever of the 4 topics you chose, and just teach us about it. And you can do that however you want to. If you just want to talk the whole time, just kind of like give us a little lecture about it, that's totally fine. If you want to get creative, if you want to show some clips, if you have like a video thing, or play some clips if you stay completely audio, that's fine. It does need to be between 2 and 4 minutes. I say between 2 and 4 minutes. It needs to be at least 2 minutes. I have had people turn in like 10-minute podcasts, and I'm not going to count off for that. It's just going to be like, ooh, now I have to actually like set aside some time to listen to it. But you can record this however you want to. If you like, you can do it on your phone, using the whatever it is, voice recorder. 20 minutes, good Lord. And then just airdrop that to yourself. If you don't have airdrop capabilities, that's obviously not going to work for you. You can use GarageBand. You can record a Zoom, which is super easy to do. That would be an easy way to incorporate some visual stuff if you want to. But you could also just like have a blank screen and record your stuff and then upload it to Canvas. Any other specific questions or more clarification needed about any of it? You're doing the podcast, which is on Canvas from last week. It's due Friday. It was posted the 29th. No, not the 29th. It's due the 29th. It was posted whatever day that was last week. That doesn't tell me on Canvas. Where is it? Here we are. Your 4 topics that you can choose from. You're just doing one of these topics and looking up information about them. The first one you can pick is galvanism, which is this dude Luigi Galvani's work with electric currents to stimulate muscle movement. You can do it about body snatching, which is the theft of bodies from graves for the purpose of sale to doctors and scientists. You can do vivisections, which is dissecting living animals for the purpose of scientific study. Living animals. Or you could do polar expeditions, which is exactly what it sounds like, expeditions to the North or South Pole. So that's all on Canvas. It's the title of the assignment is The Risks and Rewards of Science Multimedia Presentation / Podcast. Just to reiterate, it does say multimedia presentation. You can do one form of media. You can do just audio. If you want to incorporate more, visuals, you can do that too. Any more questions? We only got like a minute till the bell, actually. Questions, clarification? We good? All right. Okay, well, if you do have any questions, feel free to email me. And like I said, once we take attendance and everything tomorrow, I'm pretty much just going to give you guys the whole class period to work on this. So we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. But if you have any questions in the meantime, write any of the 4 topics. If you have any questions in the meantime, just let me know. And I'll see y'all tomorrow.